Hello and welcome to Book It. I'm Carol Anne Riddell. Today we are joined by best-selling author André Aciman. Among his many accomplishments, he is also a distinguished professor at the CUNY Graduate Center. André, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Thank you for having me.
So your latest book is Roman Year, and it's a memoir that details your time in Rome as a teenager. Tell us a little bit about the circumstances that led to your arriving in Rome, because before that you'd been raised in Egypt.
That's correct. First of all, it's important to remember that I'm Jewish and that the climate in Egypt had become extremely anti-Semitic to the point where essentially many Jews, the ones that hadn't left in 1956-57 and who had remained thinking that their welfare was still guaranteed, that they would stay there in Egypt as my parents wanted to stay in Egypt because they led a very nice lifestyle. But we were kicked out, as many Jews were kicked out.
Yes.
And having been kicked out, we didn't know where to go because everything had basically been solidified against us. So we didn't really have funds abroad, and the very little that we had abroad was stolen. So that was another thing. But fundamentally, we arrived totally penniless and very poor.
Yes, and I've heard you say in interviews that it was incredibly difficult to suddenly become so poor. Your life really changed entirely overnight.
Well, you didn't know what poverty meant. And basically, I remember very well that if the window broke because there was a bad wind that day and the glass shattered, you had to decide, am I going to replace the window or am I going to go to the movies this weekend with my brother and my mother? And so that kind of decision making, I'd never had to make a decision like that. There was always a movie house. You went to the movies once, 2, 3 times a week. Now we could hardly afford once.
Right.
So it became very difficult. And
many people have, romantic notions of Rome, but
yeah.
It's very clear in the book that at least when you were a teenager, you hated it. In fact, you say that you spent a lot of your time there, sequestered away, reading, kind of avoiding the city.
Totally avoiding it, because I remember closing the shutters, not the windows, but the shutters to the window. I was staying in the dark with my lamp on, and that was a way of making certain that I was not having any business with the city of Rome, which is ideal in many respects.
Yes.
And gradually it grew up on me, but at the beginning it was a horrible.
Yeah, eventually it worked its magic and you sort of fell in love with it, right?
Yes, indirectly it started to have its magic work on me. But initially I hated Rome, I hated Italy, I didn't want to be there. I was thinking of England as a kind of far-fetched notion, but Paris was extremely alluring, so I couldn't wait to be in Paris.
I was very struck by how vivid and specific your memories are in the book. How did you resurrect all of that?
You know what? Once you sit down to remember, you remember. It's just everybody.
I think it must be more of a gift than that, André.
No. It's basically, I think writing is a way of entering yourself. And you basically begin to excavate. And you find things that you say, my God, I never thought of that. This person I met, I don't remember meeting them at all, but the writing process brings everything to the fore. If we all had the discipline to do that and nothing else, then we would be remembering a lot.
I felt that one of the things you captured really well in the book was sort of this sense of variability of being a teenager. You're sort of defining yourself and then redefining yourself. There's this real sense of longing in the book, of searching in the book. Would you say to any degree that that is still true of you, some of that quality?
Totally true, because I don't think, first of all, I don't have a religion. I know I'm Jewish, but I never was bar mitzvahed. I didn't believe in anything, and I didn't want to believe in anything. So that took care of that. I didn't have a nationality because basically, I was this and that and born here and there, and I spoke French at home, but I wasn't French. I was Italian, but I didn't like being Italian. I was born in Egypt, but I was not Egyptian. I can go on forever. And so that sort of makes a flag like a piece of cloth. It doesn't have any meaning for you. Nationality, patriotism, these are concepts that I don't understand at all.
So what do you consider home then?
You don't have a home. And somebody once asked me, where do you want to be buried? And of course that invokes the concept of home.
Yes.
Because you want to be buried in somewhere that means something to you, not something that's meaningless. And so I said, well, I want to be buried. I don't know where I want to be buried. So I don't even know what my nationality is. So everything is, as the wording is, fluid.
Yeah.
I'm just everywhere.
We mentioned that you are a member of the CUNY family. You are a professor at the Graduate Center. It's really kind of a full circle situation because you initially came to New York to attend CUNY as an undergrad.
That's correct.
What does that feel like?
Well, it's like there was a wisdom somewhere saying I came to America because I have to remind you that the tuition at CUNY at that time was $30 a semester.
Wow.
So that does not exist any longer.
No.
Of course it doesn't. But that is what allowed me to come to America, and having been accepted at Hunter in the Bronx and then became Lehman, I just thrived. This was fantastic. I took courses. Of course, I was a good student, and the faculty loved me and they remembered me. And essentially then I went to Harvard. I got my PhD at Harvard, and I started teaching at Princeton. And eventually an offer came from the Graduate Center. And I said, of course, it makes perfect sense.
It makes sense. There's a harmony to it, right?
I'm a New Yorker. I've always been a New Yorker. I've never been sort of a Canterbridgean or a person from Harvard. That was just a degree. But it makes a lot of sense to me that I came back to CUNY.
And do you find that working with students now sort of shapes or informs your writing in some way?
No, it doesn't. It would be nice if it did, but it doesn't. Because as I said, when I'm writing something that's totally out of time, out of space. I usually write about Italy, even though I wasn't in love with Italy. But a lot of the stuff I write is about Italy. For some reason, I'll never understand why. It's never about Egypt.
But you did go back to Italy with your family, right? And
Yes,
you
yes.
felt very close to it in some ways.
In some ways I was, but I thought I was going to put it to bed. And what happens with memory is that you never manage to put any memory to bed.
Yes, it's hard to do that in life.
Actually, you know, when I meet somebody that I haven't seen in 40, 50 years, because I was in love with them once upon a time, I say, you know, I could fall back in love with them. That's not supposed to happen, but the possibility is clearly there.
Why do you think that is, though? What makes you that way? I don't think I'm that way. What makes you feel that way, do you think? What about you is so unique that that is a possibility?
Because I believe that you never let go of the things that hurt you. And
Wow, that is very interesting.
and the things that hurt you, you know, stay there forever. I mean, they may not be on the surface, but all you have to do is dig a bit and you say, oh my God, yeah, that bruise is still there. And the scars are all there, so.
Wow, that's very interesting. So you've written a number of books, but we have to touch on Call Me By Your Name.
Of course.
It came out in 2007, I believe I have that right.
Yes, correct.
It became a bestseller. It was made into a movie. It won an Oscar. Did you see any of that coming?
And the Oscar goes to James Ivory, Call Me By Your Name.
Of course not. Of course not, because I thought that I was writing a book, and I wrote it because I was having difficulty with another book, which is my favorite book, but nobody reads it because it's just too turgid, too tense. So I just, but I was having difficulty, so I said, I'm going to write something else. It's summer, coming summer. So I decided to write that book, and it went fast. It went in 3 months, I was done with it, and I was going to go back to my other book. That's the end of the story. But my agent saw it, and I said, look, I'm sorry, I wrote a different book, but whatever, please, let's hide it if it doesn't work. And she says, I'm going to sell this tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah.
So how did you feel? I'm always curious about this. How did you feel as an author seeing the book on the screen? Did you feel that it was an accurate representation of your work?
Yes, that's the trouble with many things, is that most authors complain no end that their book has been transformed and transmogrified and badly adapted to the screen. My book was very well adapted to the screen, but for certain scenes, like there's a part in Rome that doesn't exist in the film, fine. And the ending of the movie does not exist, but it's as good, if not better, than the one I had in the book. And the rest of the scene with the father, which is sort of the crux of the movie, the father and the
Yes.
son talking, that was taken word for word.
Wow. Yes.
So James Ivory, who did the script,
Yes.
basically decided that this is going to stay.
Yeah, that was such a moving piece of the film, I
I
thought.
think that that's what hit people.
I understand that another one of your books, Enigma Variations, is being made into a series
Yeah.
with Jeremy Allen White. So how do you feel about that?
I hope it's good, but you know, my agent says, Andre, nothing is real until the camera starts rolling.
Okay, okay.
So I'm going with that sort of wisdom. If it's not happening yet, it's not happening at all, and I don't think about it.
Okay, well, I say yes, chef. Did you watch The Bear?
I watched one episode of it, and I said, yeah, I can see why he's good. And he's going to be very good.
And you would be an executive producer on that as well.
That's correct.
Yes.
Although I don't know what that means, but that's a different issue.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about your writing process and how you go about starting a book. A first question, just a little bit random, but is there any sort of habit or ritual or, I don't know, snack that is a must-have part of sitting down to write?
No, there isn't a single thing. Basically, I go to the refrigerator occasionally during the day, many times, and I just pick at whatever there is. There is no ritual, no sanctimonious anything happening around writing. I mean, you have to realize that when I was writing my first 3 books, I had little children at home.
Yes.
And they made a lot of noise, and they had to be attended to, and I had to give them baths every single day. And so I enjoyed that, but that was an interruption. And when they came home from school, that was another.
So you had to write around the rest of your life.
You had to, yes, and the rest of your life was not insignificant. It was more important than my quote-unquote writing career.
Yes.
You know, so in many respects, I have never sort of polished a ritual. I wake up, I go to writing. I read my emails. I love interruptions, like a phone call comes. Oh, I love it. Sorry to disturb you. No, absolutely not. It's the other way around. So please keep talking, you know. There is no ritual, nothing.
That's very interesting to me. And what do you find is the most challenging part of starting a book? Is it the beginning? Is it finding the end? Do you plot your books out thoroughly?
No, I wish I could. I don't know how to. So I never have an idea of where this book is going, if it's going to go anywhere. I just write a chapter at a time or a page at a time. That's how I do it. And sometimes I realize this is all wrong. Okay, we're going to just go back and fix it.
Wow.
And
I must say I'm surprised to hear that, but it's fascinating.
No, I have no. There are authors I know who will not start a book until they have the plot all.
Sure. Yes,
already.
I think that many people do that.
Yes, but then I don't have plots. So my plots are very exiguous. They're sort of almost nothing. So because I'm not interested in plots, I've always hated plots.
You're more interested in character.
Character, what goes on in their minds, what they're not admitting, what they're not saying, etc. That really fascinates me.
You've had so much success and so much acclaim as an author. What is a piece of advice that you would give to writers who are just starting out?
I usually have the same advice, but it goes something like this, and it's something I believe in, is if you're arriving at a sentence, John, you know, saw Mary and she was beautiful, period. Don't put that period there. Put a comma instead.
Interesting.
And then say something that was not predictable, was not predicted, because you weren't going to go there. But now you've put a comma instead, so now you have to invent something else about their relationship. Okay? She's not just beautiful. She had a particular way of saying things that made it necessary for you to understand something else she was saying. That, I'm just inventing this as I'm talking to you, but fundamentally, it is a way of extending your thinking and not put a Hemingwayan period where you should never have put it.
Wow, that is a terrific piece of advice and kind of applies to life more broadly as well.
Well, there's always commas everywhere.
That's right, yes. Life could be a perpetual comma, I suppose. Just a last question for you, Andre. Looking back at the teenage boy that you were in this book, what is one thing you would say to your younger self, if you could now?
If I could now, be bolder. You know, he's pretty bold.
Yes.
But be bolder yet and explore everything. Just don't be a good boy with your mother and your brother and your parents and whatever. Just go out and explore the world. My big regret is that when I came to America, I came with my parents and my brother. I would have preferred to have come by myself.
Interesting. Thank you so much for all this time. What a pleasure it has been to talk to you, Andre. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's head to our podcast studio to find out what Isabel Ortiz has for us in Breaking Books.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Breaking Books. I'm Isabel Ortiz, and today I'm sitting down with an incredible author, Carlos Matias, to discuss his debut children's book, Emergency Quarters. Hi Carlos, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi Isabel, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you.
This book is something so special because it takes the simple moment of the first time a kid is walking to school by himself for the first time. It takes that special moment and expands on it in a way that I think a lot of New York City kids can relate to. So I would love if you could tell us a little bit about where we find our main character, Ernesto, in the start of the book.
Yeah, of course. So in the start of the book, it is Ernesto's first time walking to school by himself. It's the beginning of the week, and we see his mom kind of seeing him off to school for the first time. So we see that moment when, you know, he's getting his independence and freedom, and his mom is also letting him go. I feel like there's so much tenderness and tension in that moment, you know. I don't have kids, but I can imagine what it would be like for a parent for the first time. You're seeing your kid off, you know, you're probably like watching from the window or the front door until you can no longer see them. Then you probably go inside and cry, you know. And then for the kid, it's such an exciting moment, but also scary, right? It's like, it's the first time they're really interacting with the world by themselves. You know, before that, you're probably walking everywhere with your mother or your dad.
The journey that Ernesto takes, like you mentioned, he stops by the bodega, he stops by the arcade with his friends, he stops by the juice lady on the street. There, in all these moments, he's experiencing independence for the first time, but in the back of his head is his mom, because she every morning gives him an emergency quarter. And in that way, it kind of is the mom making sure that he's safe. So what really is an emergency quarter, and is that something that your mom did with you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so it's a true story, and it's something my mom never lets anyone forget when she's telling them about the book. She's like, yeah, I used to give Carlos quarters every day when he was leaving to school, so the book's based on what, you know. And I'm like, yeah, Mom, we know.
She inspired it a little, yeah.
Yeah, she always has to say that, yeah, I inspired the book, you know. But it is a true story, you know. Back then, you know, payphones were everywhere, so she would give me a quarter every day when I'd be leaving to school, and she'd be like, oh, just call me if anything. You know, if there's an emergency, or if you're gonna like hang out after school or something, just like, you know, keep me updated. When you think back, it was like weird times when you didn't have cell phones and you couldn't get in touch with everyone, you know. Yeah. So through this book, parents can like communicate that with their kids and kind of teach them, you know. And like I feel like a lot of parents are proud to share the book with their kids because of that. Yeah. They get to teach them about their childhood. Yeah.
It lets them, it's kind of like a time capsule in a way.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and especially too with the illustrations in this book, you are really sent back to 1990s New York. So really, what was your relationship to growing up in Queens, and then how do you see that play out in this book?
Gracie Zhang, the illustrator, the amazing illustrator, she did an incredible job just capturing that the essence of those times. I think one really cool thing was, so I grew up in 103rd Street in Corona, Queens, and that's like a pretty popular train station, has like the plaza with the street vendors and stuff. She didn't know that. And when I got some of the sketches back, she had the 103rd Street train station with the vendors. And I was like, oh my God, it's wild. Like, I didn't even send you any reference images of that specific part of Corona.
Yeah.
But she had already like included the train station. And I was like, wow, you're like in my head.
And this book touches on something that I think is really important for kids to learn, for anybody to learn really, is this idea of financial literacy. And I feel like Ernesto's mother giving him these emergency quarters every way is her way of making sure he is safe, but also making sure that he's learning how to save them. And we see that come up throughout the book. This idea of financial literacy, was that something you expected, or was that just what I took from it?
So it's funny you mention that, because one, Ernesto has way more willpower than I do, even though he's based on me, because I would have spent that quarter immediately, which I used to, right? But I wish I could lie and say that that was the plan. But, and, like you mentioned, is that something that you took from it? Because, like, I feel like all stories, you write from your heart and what you know, but then different people take different things from it. Yeah. So, like, when I was talking to the editor, Mabel Sue, who's such an amazing editor, and the one who got me and, like, found my story in the Times. But when I was talking to her one time, she was like, I love the financial, in the lessons around financial independence and financial literacy. That's so important, and you don't see that in a lot of books. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Thank you for that.
You're like, that's exactly what I intended.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I know what you're talking about. I'm so glad you picked it up. In my head, I was like, oh my God, I never thought about that. It's so funny because you would think a book about quarters, that would be in your head. Isabel, when I tell you I never thought about like the financial aspect of it, for me it was just like really, telling a story about how I used to get these quarters, and through that mechanic, like using that to tell his adventure of his neighborhood and the people in his neighborhood, that was like the thing, but she found that theme in it. And I was like, oh, wow, never really thought of that.
Well, I think it's a very important lesson to learn. But you explained how you submitted Emergency Quarters as kind of a short story to the New York Times in their Metropolitan Daily section. You also have this experience as a journalist before your debut children's book. So what was that like to take your experience, one, as a journalist, and then have it be a short story in the Metropolitan Daily to then make it a full book? Because I know as a journalist, you probably have to relearn some writing techniques when you're transferring from journalism to children's book.
Yeah, you definitely have to learn so much. It's a completely different thing where if you're writing like long form, you have so much space, whether it's like journalism or, like an article, a profile on a celebrity, a novel, whatever. You have a lot of space to like build a setting, right? And talk about how the wind feels on your face or how the air smells, you know? Where in a picture book, you have to get right to it. And like every page, not even every line has to kind of like tell the story and move the story because you don't have that much space.
But this book has gone on to receive national recognition. It won the Ezra Jack Keats Writer Honor. So what was that like for you to receive that recognition, especially it being your debut book? I
got like super emotional. It's something I never, thought such a small story can receive. So and then also like not to mention the impact that Ezra Jack Keats, as a writer and the foundation have had. Yeah. Like I remember reading Snowy Days when I was little, Me
too.
You too, right? Like we all did.
I think a lot of people.
A lot of people did, so to like get recognized by that and what they've done, and it's a great group to be in, and I was lucky enough to get invited to Mississippi, and we had like an award show and I met everyone, and it was an amazing time. Yeah.
So you have been a journalist. You're now a debut children's book author. Are you working on any new stories? Do you plan on staying in this kind of children's book picture book?
So I definitely am writing a second picture book,
Nice.
which I'm actually working on right now, and I've been working on for like the past, I think, like 2 years.
Okay.
I'm a very slow writer. Been working on for like the past 2 years with Mabel. So hopefully that'll come out soon. Yeah, so I definitely want to keep writing picture books and maybe some young adult novels. I've been writing screenplays for like a few years, so hopefully that comes to life one day. Just I love storytelling, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, very nice. And I am excited to see what you come out with next, whether it's
thank you.
screenplay or whether it's something we get to see on screen or
Yeah.
a children's book.
Thank you.
And now to Uncensored. Author and columnist Linda Stasi is back, and she's got lots to say about what she's reading.
First, a legal disclaimer. Do not read or listen to the audio version of When the Moon Hits Your Eye by John Scalzi, especially not while riding public transportation or drinking a beverage. You might risk life and limb by laughing so hard that you squirt Diet Coke right out of your nose and onto another passenger. So, you might ask, how in hell can a book about the moon turning to cheese be scientifically based, absurdly insane, and hilarious, all while skewing billionaires, Wall Street bros, terminal patients, teenagers, boomers, politicians, idiot influencers, astronauts, and everybody else that I even forgot to mention? I don't know how, but I only know that Scalzi has done it with this novel, and it's my favorite book of the year so far. The book is about how the world's greatest scientists discover that the moon has turned to cheese after noticing that all of the moon rocks, which have been brought back to Earth, start softening up like unrefrigerated brie. There is even a gigantic moon volcano spewing hot cheese balls towards the Earth. Meantime, the richest, most annoying billionaire who has a contract to build rockets for the U.S. government wants to be the first human to step onto the fondue pot that used to be the moon. Oops, that doesn't end well. Well, at least not for Tech Bro. But if a character who is a combo of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos makes you want to hurl spitballs, or in this case, cheese balls, it ends extremely well. I love this book. In another space and time continuum altogether is Alice Feeney's beautiful and ugly book titled, appropriately enough, Beautiful Ugly. The book centers around an egocentric failed novelist whose dream comes true at the same moment that his worst nightmare occurs. He hits the New York Times bestseller just as his reporter wife goes missing. Somehow or other, even though his book is a smash bestseller and he makes a ton of money, in a very short span of time, depression and anxiety over his wife's disappearance sends him into a complete downward spiral. He goes broke, loses his house, and drinks himself silly. He is rescued, or so he thinks, by the agent who happens to be the woman who raised his wife. The agent invites him to go spend time on a tiny Scottish island in the cottage where her deceased client wrote all his bestsellers. Great! That is until he thinks he sees his dead wife everywhere. And oh yeah, there are no cell phones and no way off the island. I love this beautifully written book, but not so much the convoluted ending. For Uncensored, I'm Linda Stasi.
That wraps up another chapter for us. Thanks so much for watching. A quick reminder to check us out on our new CUNY TV app and on social media. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Carol Anne Riddell. See you next time on Book It.